In this tutorial, you'll have a look at creating solids. Now, a solid is nothing more than just a simple layer filled with a single color. But don't let that make you think that it isn't important. Solids are perhaps one of the most important elements in an After Effects project. You'll be using solids to change your background color, you'll be using them to apply effects to, you'll be using them as bars and to mask them. They have lots of different uses. Now, to create one, you go to the layer menu at the top, and then if this menu is grayed out like this, that's because the relevant panel isn't selected. Because the solid is something that you create in the timeline or the composition panel, you have to have either the composition or the timeline panels selected. So you do that simply by clicking on the panel, if you remember, and that will activate the panel. I can then go to Layer, New, and I can create a solid layer. This is a shortcut you do want to remember, Control or Command Y. This is the shortcut for a solid. So if I click outside, maybe into the timeline here, and if I press Command Y, that's also going to bring up the exact same menu here to create a solid. So first, let's go and name the solid. Let's call this Square. And down here, you can set the width and the height. By default, it's going to be the same width and the height as the composition. But if you change these values, let's say, for example, I click and drag this, or I can click and type in a value as well. Let's say I make this exactly 500 by 500. If you want to change this now to make it the same size as the composition, you just come and click on this button here where it says Make Comp Size. That's now going to set it to be exactly the same size as the composition. Otherwise, you can of course just go and type in the values here. So I'm going to make this exactly, let's say, 250 by 250. And I'll leave the units set to pixels. You have these other options here as well. And I'm not going to change the pixel aspect ratio, so I want the pixels to be square pixels. And down here, I have the color option. So if I click on this, I can go and pick a color from the right hand side. Let's say I make this a blue color, and then the shade of that on the left. And then I hit OK. And I OK this one as well. And a solid gets created in the center of the composition. If you want to update this solid, so you want to change the settings of this, let's say the size or the color maybe, all you have to do is to make sure that the solid is selected here, and then go up to the layer menu, and instead of creating a new solid, you click on Solid Settings. Another shortcut you probably want to remember, that's Shift Command Y, rather than just Command Y, which was the shortcut for the solid. This is Shift Command Y, which is the shortcut to edit the solid. So if I go Solid Settings, I can change anything about the solid here. I can make this, let's say, a little smaller. So if I go to 200 by 200, and maybe give this a different color as well. So I'm just going to click on the color swatch, and maybe make this green, and maybe make it slightly brighter as well. And then OK this one, and then OK this one as well. And that's how you update the existing solid. You see, as soon as you create a solid, After Effects will automatically create a folder here in the project panel. It will call that folder Solids as well, and it will place all the solids that you create inside this folder. So this is just a useful way of keeping your project panel organized, and After Effects is helping you do that. Let's say we move this solid from here to the left, and I hold the Shift key down so it's a straight line. In order to create multiple copies of this, all you have to do is to select the layer, either here or down here, and then press Command D on the keyboard, D for duplicate, or you can go to Edit and choose Duplicate here as well. And this is going to work for pretty much anything in After Effects. For example, if you have a composition here and you want to duplicate this, all you need to do is to press Command D, and that's a second copy there, and Command D again. Every time you do this, it's duplicating the composition. I'm going to press Command Z to undo once and twice. Instead of duplicating the composition, I'm going to select the layer here and then press Command D and then Command D again. So I have 3 copies exactly on top of each other. You'll notice if I go back to my solids folder, I still have a single solid object here. That means that these copies are actually copies of the first one. So you didn't duplicate the source, you just duplicated the instances of that in the timeline. Which means that your After Effects file is actually going to be smaller than it would be if you duplicated the actual solid. So I'm going to go and collapse this again. Let's go and separate them away from each other first. So I'm going to go click on the top one, maybe drag it here, and then click on that one, and then drag it here. So just to find out which one's which, I'm going to select the top one here. That's the one in the middle actually. So I'm going to put this to the middle as well, like that. So that's in the middle. And then the left one is the one at the bottom in the layer list. So I'm going to lift this up. And then I'll select the middle one again, which is now the last one. I'm going to move this up as well. So now that we have the left one as the first layer, the middle one as the second layer, and the right one as the third layer. Let's go and recolor them. So I'm going to select the right one, and I'll go to Layer, Solid Settings, and I'll make this a different color. So I'm just going to go and change the color to, let's say, blue, and OK that one. And press New here. This is going to update the layer. And this one actually does create a new solid now, because it's a different solid, it's a different color. And if you look at the project panel into the solids folder, you now have the second solid there. So I'm going to do the same for the middle one. go to Layer, Solid Settings, and I'll give this a different color. Let's say we make this a red color, like that maybe. And I OK that one as well, and then press New. And now I have 3 solids, so they're all called squares here, so I'm going to update the names as well. So I'll select this one. If you remember to update the name, you just press Return. I'll call this one green, and the second one, I'll call it red. And the third one should be called blue. And there we go. There's a really interesting feature in After Effects, and I use this quite a lot, especially when I want to reorganize the layers panel. And that is, if you select the layers in any specific order using the Control key. For example, I select the blue layer first, then hold down Control or Command on the Mac, and then select the green one, and then the red one. So it was blue, green, and red. If I then cut these layers, that's Control or Command X to cut them. And then if I just paste them, Control or Command V, it's going to paste them in that order. So it puts blue first, then green, then red. Now to correct this, let's say for example I want the blue to be my last one, and the green to be the first. I select the green first, then Control or Command select the red, then Command select the blue as well, and then cut these, Control X or Command X, and then paste, Command V. Now the green is the first, the red is the second one, and the blue is the third one.